This is the Viking Update Show, the most listened to show on TalkNorth.com. That is our Minnesota sports and other stuff website and podcast network. All the sports you want to hear about, plus a great business show with Joe Leach. I don't like business shows, and I love that show, so I recommend you give it a listen. It's just very philosophical and fun. Joe does a great job with it. We have the new Cheryl Reeve show. We have a bunch of stuff. Go to talknorth.com, check it out. Obviously, this is our Vikings and football show. Again, the most popular on the network. If you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. And one personal business note, as we talk to national advertisers and national advertising aggregators, they say that they really value downloads more than just simple streaming listens. If you want to help out the network, help us expand and grow, please download when you listen anytime you can. We appreciate it. Tim, Dalvin Cook back on the practice field with an actual huddle, playing football
with a full defense facing him. So that was encouraging news. Up until this point, he had done some of the individual things that, taking handoffs and running routes and things like that. But when the offense and defense would come together for that part of practice, he would head out to another practice field to do rehab exercises. Well, he says he found out on Monday that the Vikings were going to allow him to get involved in the full team aspect of work, and he looked like he didn't have a whole lot of hesitation. Now, truth be told, there aren't pads on, and it's not necessarily full team, and as soon as there's contact made, that's it. So,
So it's kind of like how I would play football. Any hint of contact, that's it.
Right.
Blow the whistle.
It's kind of like flag football.
Yes.
It's just as soon as you kind of run into traffic, they blow the whistle and it's dead. And that's not just for Dalvin Cook on the field.
Right.
That's just the way they have to go about practices this offseason, or every offseason with the NFL rules. But, that said, he looked like he was trying to find a spot, hitting it like he had in the past. And he talked afterwards saying, this is another milestone for him in his rehab. And, he doesn't think about the knee at this point. It's just go out there, trust it. Saying, he's put in the work in the past. And I think it also helps when you have a superstar like Adrian Peterson going through it with the same training staff that Dalvin Cook is. Therefore, he knows, hey, these guys have been through it. They did the right thing with Adrian Peterson. They're going to do the right thing with me. And, he talked about believing he's going to come back better than he was last year in the first month of the season.
Has he learned how to say, I'm going to rush for 2,500 yards yet?
No, he hasn't.
He'll get there. He'll get that later in the training.
Yeah, you know what? Once he probably hits 1,500 yard season, then those questions will start coming at him. And, once again, what do you want a guy to say when you say, do you think you can hit 2,000? No, I don't think there's any way.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Thanks to Twill in the Edina Galleria, twillmn.com. Twill on Instagram, just like it sounds, TWILL. I played golf yesterday wearing my new Johnny O golf shirt. Tim was like playing golf naked. It was so comfortable. I don't want to. Just to give you an image that will cause you to miss your next meal. No, it's.
Do you want people
stuff.
to like the shirts, or
that's a very good point. No, but it was really cool. We'll tell you. We have some golf notes coming up later. Also, thank you to Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, Hoaglund. We'll tell you more about their businesses later. What else happened at practice today, Tim?
Well, Kirk Cousins had looked very good in past practices, and it seemed like it kind of took him a while with this practice. Not really hitting a lot downfield. They didn't go downfield a bunch, and maybe it's that the defense is starting to kind of amp things up a little bit and challenge him a little bit more. I
think it was the Packer drone hovering above the outdoor field is what kept.
And by the way, there are a lot of planes going over practice,
and a lot of them are green and gold.
Yeah, well, I don't know. A lot of them have Delta stamped on the side.
They're in disguise.
Just Ted Thompson's way, and. But the interesting part is, as we talk about kind of the practice and the atmosphere of practice, one note, the stadium that the Vikings are building on this facility, this campus, is now getting the artificial turf put in. So they are expecting that thing to be ready basically next week. They're not going to use it for minicamp, but they say, for all intents and purposes, that stadium where, they'll have some of their night practices for training camp there. And they've kind of got the parking situation figured out for training camp. So just as fans are thinking about, okay, what am I going to do in, 6 weeks when training camp hits, the parking will be out here. Just kind of walk across between two ponds or lakes that have been made here, and they'll be right there in a nice new stadium.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be nice just to pop down here whenever you want instead of having to drive 169 and go by the Corin Robinson Memorial, speeding trap. It's going to be a fun summer, I think, actually. What is the offensive line alignment this week?
It's really the same as it was last week. Riley Reif, left tackle. Tom Compton, left guard. Nick Easton at center because Pat Elflein is not practicing yet. Both of those guys had broken ankles. Nick Easton's happened a lot earlier than Pat Elflein. So, if they are of the similar type of injury, you would expect that Elflein would be ready for training camp since Easton's been ready for OTAs. And then as we go down further, Mike Remmers at right guard and Rashad Hill out at right tackle.
Still interesting.
Yeah. And, as we talk about this, all through training camp and preseason last year, they had so many different combinations going on that offensive line, and I think that the alignment that they had for their regular season opener, they hadn't used all of preseason. So at that time, midway through training camp, we're thinking, okay, Pat Elflein's probably going to be a guard, and all of a sudden, nope, they stuck him at center. And quite honestly, I don't think they know because Mike Zimmer talked about it and said, well, once Elflein gets back, we'll just have to see how things go. At that point, I would expect that he would be back at center, Easton probably back at left guard, and then it's all about the right side of the line. Is it Remmers at right guard? Is it Tom Compton at right guard and Remmers at right tackle? But to this point, and because it is so early, it looks to me like Brian O'Neill, their second-round pick, is not going to be the starting right tackle. That said, there's a whole lot of practices to go through at this point.
I'll ask you another question about O'Neill. We'll get into the Cousins DiFilippo connection and what they're working on. But first, I do want to thank Scott Dayton and his shop, Twill, in the Edina Galleria. As I've told you before, easy place to shop, easy mall to shop in, a beautiful mall, great food options, coffee options, other things to shop for. But if you want men's clothing, everything from socks to suits, check out Twill. Again, I wore my Johnny O golf shirt the other day, and it just really comfortable. It's both comfortable and stretchy, so it's perfect for golf. They sell a lot of golf stuff. I hate talking about underwear, but the underwear I bought there is the most comfortable I've ever worn. I highly recommend it. I've also bought their some long sleeve shirts from Johnny O. Bought a long sleeve shirt made by Peter Millar that I really liked. I bought accessories there, and the great thing is you walk in and they'll probably have a game on, and they're not going to be in your face. They're going to let you browse, and you can ask questions whenever you like. It's just a friendly store.
Hi, I'm Stacy Souhan. I love Twill, Scott Dayton's shop in the Edina Galleria. Twill takes the stress out of shopping by offering updated traditional fashion. I know that if Jim goes in there shopping alone, I will like what he buys, whether it's pajamas, flannel shirts, or suits. I plan to recommend Twill to my daughter when she has to buy wedding party gifts and attire. Twill in the Edina Galleria will bring your fashion game to a championship level.
So my colleague Ben Gessling in the Star Tribune wrote some interesting stuff about Kirk Cousins and John DiFilippo. I know you've covered that, the same ground. One thing that Ben made note of is that DiFilippo has some definite ideas how he wants to attack the red zone. Part of it is running the ball inside the 20. Part of it is really targeting the back of the end zone and throwing the ball high.
Yeah, and they've done both in these OTAs. I think it was Laquan Treadwell last week that we saw with a catch in the back of the end zone. Today we saw Kyle Rudolph with a catch right at the goal line. And, the second and third team offenses, really nice catch. I'm trying to think of who it was. It was like a third or fourth string type of receiver in the back of the end zone. So that said, they are using, every inch of the field that you can when it gets compressed down in the red zone. the thing that has stood out a little bit about Cousins, and Zimmer was asked about it today, if they can establish that running game with Dalvin Cook back, Cousins is a really good play action quarterback. And he's, we talked about it a little bit last week on the podcast. He's really athletic. Whereas Sam Bradford is more of a statue back there, Cousins will give them the ability to roll out on play action, misdirection. And another thing that really has stood out, especially this week as they progress in installing this offense, a lot of pre-shift motions or pre-snap motions, shifting, all of that sort of stuff to help put pressure on the defense, but also I think give Cousins some reads on what the defense is going to do, who's going to be covering who, what sort of, is it man or zones within a man scheme. So all of that is to say that, there's a lot of eye candy with this offense, but I think all of that has a one or another sort of intention to tip the defense's hand or to try to make sure that the defense isn't, aligned right away the way that they should be. And so I'm really curious to see how it all comes together. Dalvin Cook did talk about it a little bit today, saying, he really hopes that this running game can get going so that all of the play action that Kirk Cousins is so good at really helps the receivers. And so if you get a linebacker coming up to stop the run and Kyle Rudolph behind him, that could be really good for Rudolph and for the offense.
Absolutely. You mentioned Cousins' athletic ability. Keenum did I thought one of Keenum's strengths was scrambling and taking yards that were there by running the ball. How would you compare Cousins to Keenum? And do you think this coaching staff, given Cousins' importance and his salary and his future here, how much do you think they want him to run?
I think it's going to be more deliberate with Cousins, where this is the design of the play. We're having you roll out. And I think they'll do quite a bit of the rollouts with him. But to me, one of the big differences is Cousins is very comfortable in the pocket as well, and he's a taller quarterback than Keenum was, so I think more capable of standing in the pocket, whereas I felt like Keenum was always kind of scrambling to find a visual lane to see his receivers. Cousins, I think, can stand up taller there and take the yards when they're there. I don't want to imply that, by Cousins being athletic, they're going to set up 5 runs for him every game. I don't think that's in the cards. But I do think rolling him out to the edges and using a lot of play action is in the cards for him.
That makes sense. Let's thank Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin. It's golf season, so I think we're going to end up on a golf course with Tony here pretty soon. He handles my insurance and has done so very well. I know Michael Russo is very happy with Tony's services, his app, his staff, his accessibility. We talk all the time. Tony has become a co-host on the Minnesota Sports Fan Podcast with Nick Henry, who I'll be seeing shortly as well. Tony's become a big part of the network as well as a big supporter of it. So I can highly recommend Tony as a State Farm agent, your State Farm agent.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
So guess what? We cannot stay away from the real world when you're dealing with the NFL. The Eagles decided not to go to Washington, D.C., to go to the White House because, this feels like it wasn't going to work out. Let's put it that way. And at some point, the president said they weren't invited, probably after he realized they weren't going to show up anywhere. There were going to be like 8 people up there and it was going to look stupid. So, and I give